You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. As the transfer portal cycle kind of continues to spin right now, and every day, seemingly every time you hit refresh on Twitter or one of the portal sites, another name has entered the portal. But soon we're going to start getting answers to a lot of questions of where these guys are going to go. We're learning more and more of players entering the portal. Pretty soon we're going to start learning of where these players who've entered the portal are going to land. And Pete Nakos from On3, who's, I mean, he and Hayes Fawcett right now are kind of the two guys at the forefront pushing all the portal news out. Pete Nakos has a prediction piece up at On3 right now where there's a handful of some of the premier portal targets and predicting where they're going to land. And one of them, Kentucky wide receiver Barion Brown, he's projecting to land at LSU. Now, if you're not familiar with Barion Brown, he's a guy that a couple of seasons ago was a freshman All-American and had a monster freshman year back in 2022 with Kentucky. 50 catches for 628 yards and 4 touchdowns, all in his freshman season there in Lexington. Last year, in 2023, another very productive year. 43 catches, 539, and 4 scores. And then this year, as we all know, Kentucky was dreadful. They were 1-7 in the league. They were one of the worst offenses in college football. They were the worst scoring offense in the SEC. And they were 111th nationally in passing offense. It just didn't work offensively for Kentucky this year, despite the fact that they had 2 really good and elite wide receivers. They just couldn't throw the football. So Barion Brown hit the portal. And according to Pete Nakos, this is a guy that he is projecting is going to land at LSU. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Florida State were all in the mix. More on that here in just a second. He's 6'1", 182. And according to On3, they estimate he'd command between $650K and $1 million in the portal. So there's 2 components of this. One is what it's going to take to land a guy like Barion Brown, and the 2 is what a guy like that would mean to LSU if you do push it across the finish line. We might get the number, whatever that is, if Barion Brown does in fact land at LSU. But just looking at that range, the 650 to $1 million, assuming that's correct, and I don't know if it is, I'll be transparent. Look, I've shared numbers with y'all, and you know if I have them and I'm comfortable sharing the information, it's good information, I will. I don't know what they might be offering Brown or any transfer target right now. But what that suggests is LSU is fishing in the deep end. You know, I've shared this info with you before. The 2024 LSU football roster, the highest paid player from the collective was Will Campbell at $500,000. Look, most people will never sniff a $500,000 in a year. You can work 365 days. Most are never going to get there. Will Campbell at 18 as a left tackle in college made it for 1 year. Not bad money if you can get it, right? But it's all relative compared to what other people are making around the country. And some of the numbers that you hear thrown around. And the problem LSU had a year ago is while they wanted some of those bigger names in the portal, they missed. And 2 years ago, you might remember, like LSU went after Braden Fisk from Western Michigan, and they couldn't reel him in. He ended up at Florida State. Florida State, as I understood it that year, their NIL offer doubled LSU's. And so there were a lot of you who were not happy with me 2 years ago when I was pretty consistently telling you LSU didn't have the money to spend. And that was a reality LSU was facing. I mean, remember the context of the time. LSU paid Ed Ogeron $17 million to go away. They had to pay his staff as well. It totaled nearly $20 million. You had to pay Jay Johnson after winning a national championship. You had to pay Kim Mulkey after winning a national championship. You had to pay Matt McMahon and guarantee him a 7-year contract. I mean, it was a very expensive time. And then it's, we got to pay the players too. And you're trying to knock on the same doors. And it was tough. It was very difficult for LSU in collective fundraising early in NIL. And I was someone who said that often. And a lot of you know who you are, pointing the finger at me. Trying to act like I didn't know what I was talking about. Trust me, I knew what I was talking about. But LSU has turned a corner. And they went from early in NIL not having money to getting organized under Bayou Traditions, and now with TAF taking over the fundraising efforts for Bayou Traditions, really accelerating the contributions to where now they may not be the richest, but they ain't the poorest. And it's more of how you allocate those funds that's going to be interesting. So a couple of years ago, you couldn't. Last year, you wouldn't. You could have gotten Dominic Williams, the defensive lineman from TCU, for $1.2 million. You're like, not doing that. Okay. Well, now you've learned the lesson. Now you're armed with money to spend. Will you actually spend it and bring in the top tier players at positions of need? If they land a guy like Barion Brown, who has, according to 24/7, they rate him as the 6th best receiver in the portal. On3 rates him as the 4th best receiver in the portal. Again, a former freshman All-America who's been a 3-year starter in the SEC and a highly productive player. He is the exact type of player we're talking about that LSU has to add. When you look at receiver, Kyron Lacey's gone, CJ Daniels is gone, Mason Taylor's gone. You lose 3 of your top 4 pass catchers.
Mason Taylor!
Shelton Sampson, Landon Ibieta are also in the portal. You return Aaron Anderson at a very nice season this year. You return Xavion Thomas. We'll see about Chris Hilton. Kyle Parker's coming off of injury. You just don't have a lot of certainty there. And you're trying to get Garrett Nussmeier back. Well, I'm telling you, there's 3 things that Garrett Nussmeier is going to want to know if he returns. Who's calling plays? Who's blocking for me? And who am I throwing to? You got to answer those 3 questions before Garrett Nussmeier's like, yep, let's go. Let's run it back. Because if he don't know who's calling plays, and he's got a ragtag offensive line where you lose 4 starters, and you lose 3 of your top 4 pass catchers, and you didn't replace them, why would you come back? Why would you come back to get your head kicked in and lose and hurt your draft stock? So answer those 3 to the affirmative. And I think Garrett Nussmeier comes back. Getting a guy like Barion Brown would be a massive part of that. Now, one other thing about Barion Brown that's worth mentioning, it's kind of the circumstance at Kentucky that's worth mentioning. So remember, in 2021, Kentucky's offensive coordinator was Liam Cohen. They had a lot of success with Liam Cohen. Well, Cohen left to go to the Rams, go to the NFL. And so in 2022, as a freshman for Barion Brown, Rick Scangarello was their offensive coordinator. After 2022, Liam Cohen came back. And then after 1 year at Kentucky, he went back to the NFL. And so in 2024, Bush Hamdan was the offensive coordinator, and that was a disaster this year. So this will be, wherever Barion Brown goes, it will be his 4th offensive coordinator in as many seasons in college. So that's just something worth filing away. But LSU's got to get pass catchers. We've talked about it. You're going to hear me say it. There's wants and needs and musts. Tight end, wide receiver are very, very solidly in the musts category. And with Kamori and Pimpton going into the portal, you probably need 2 tight ends. And you've got to get at least 1 top-tier elite receiver. Not a body, not a guy that's played a little, a guy that's been a number 1 receiver in the SEC for 3 years, like Barion Brown. We'll see if you can land him. But Pete Nakos from On3 projecting Barion Brown will land at LSU if, when we learn, we'll pass it along to you. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.